The Sony RX100 Mark V was released back in October of 2016. Darn, dang near 3 years ago. When it was initially released, it was eye-wateringly expensive for a point and shoot, like $1,000. Seriously, $1,000 for a point and shoot camera. Who's gonna pay that? But since then, you can find some outrageous deals on this camera that many feel is the penultimate point and shoot. But is it still worth getting 3 years later? Let's find out. What's up everyone, I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. Now I've made more than my share of videos on the RX100V. Honestly, you'd be hard pressed to find another camera that has this specific feature set, 4K recording, super slow motion, built-in zoom lens, built-in ND, and fantastic phase detection autofocus. I don't want to spoil the whole video, but yeah, I kinda love this camera. The last time we made a video about the RX100V, we hadn't quite yet solidified our internal camera grading system, so no time like the present than to run my personal little camera through the gauntlet and see how it would work for the online content creator in 2019, because let's be honest, there's fierce competition out there anymore, and a camera has got to bring it to be added to my kit. And quick note, I personally bought this camera open box from Best Buy for around $500. Let that sink in. My mind, I still can't believe it. So you can absolutely find deals everywhere if you look hard enough. Since you might not have looked into the specs of the RX100 Mark V in the last, year or so, let's quickly cover what this bad boy can do before we start with the gauntlet. The RX100 Mark V is a 20.1 megapixel, 1-inch backside illuminated sensor. That means good. It can record up to 4K 30 frames per second internally and up to 960 frames per second for slow motion. Honestly, it's really only usable in up to 240 frames per second because that nets you around a 1080p-ish image. If you're looking for a flat image for grading because you're crazy, this can also use the S-Log2 picture profile or any of the other standard Sony picture profiles. We know which one I like. For autofocus, it has a fast hybrid system with 315 points, and some of those points, are phase detection. My favorite points. And it does have Sony's face tracking autofocus. And my personal favorite feature of this camera is the built-in ND filter. I wish every single camera had a built-in ND filter. That's enough talking about the specs, and you know what? Let's actually set this up to be the B camera for the rest of the video. Boom, swapped over to the RX100 Mark V, set to about 50mm with the autofocus turned on and in picture profile 1. It's my favorite. Now that we've got the camera established, let's take it through its required paces. First up, video quality, what you're seeing right now. Generally, cameras have one aspect of these four that we look at that they really just crush. And honestly, for the RX100 Mark V, it's image quality, because frankly, a camera with a sensor this small and internals this small should not be able to produce as nice of an image as it does. Like, the images that you can get out of the RX100 Mark V are straight up fantastic. It really has four things going for it in the image quality department that make it unlike anything else. And I mean big cameras, small cameras, anything. Downsampled 4K from 5K. It's got a fast zoom lens, like 1.8 zoom lens. Not a lot of 1-inch censored cameras of any kind can do that. Great autofocus and the flip up screen. I would call it the triangle of power, but it's the square of power, which doesn't sound as good. Now this does kind of bleed over into the fiddliness category we'll talk about later, but these four things combine together to you could basically get the exact image you want with very little effort out of this camera. If you can't use it, it's not the camera's fault. Now when it comes to image quality, there is one real serious negatives, and that's the dreaded O word. Sony cameras from this generation know what I'm talking about. This camera will absolutely overheat if you record lots of video with it for long periods of time. Now it can only record 4K for about 5 minutes at a time to try to combat this, but even that time limit doesn't fully recover the camera, and it will be something to keep in mind. I mainly use this for 1080p, that's what we're shooting on right now, and it can do that for 30 minutes at a time, and that's where the RX100 Mark V excels. But dang, that 4K is beautiful though. However, image quality isn't the full picture, pun intended, when it comes to the overall video a camera can produce, because audio is always the thing. always the thing that will mess you up when you go to check your footage later. I mean, you can have something that's totally beautifully shot, but if the audio is bad, that clip is ruined. Like, oh, it's so important. And while the overheating is a problem, again, like I mentioned, I use this as 1080p, it's not insurmountable. However, the camera lacks an audio in jack, which I do really find painful. Now, I don't know where they'd be able to put one while also letting you like have a microphone attached to it, but engineers, if you could figure that out, my mind would be blown and this would basically be the perfect camera. When I'm using the RX100 Mark V, I generally record audio off camera, like right now I'm recording to the main camera, or I do it to something like my Zoom H1N, which honestly, it ends up turning out better than video shot with one of my regular cameras, but it is an extra step, and I'm one of those guys that always tries to eliminate steps in my production. However, the audio that you can record internal to the camera isn't the worst, and you know what? Let's hop outside really quick for a video / vlogging test so I can show you. We're gonna step back this time. You know why. Yeah, welcome to the vlogging test of the Sony RX100 Mark V, and yes, this camera is so old, but it is still the best. I love checking out this camera, and I love checking out all of these small cameras, because I don't know if you've noticed this, but checking out big cameras is really tough on the shoulders. And the older I get, the more I like small, portable, easy to use kit. Now we've got this set to 4K because these vlogging tests generally don't last longer than 5 minutes. We've got the autofocus turned on, we've got the stabilization turned on, and the audio you're hearing is the audio being recorded internal to the RX100 Mark V. I don't have a microphone plugged in, so this is the vlogging you can get out of this camera. And it's so light, it's so easy to use, it's got every feature you could want and every feature that generally people look for in bigger cameras, but it's in this tiny thing that doesn't weigh anything. And oh god, I love this camera. It does literally everything. If it could record in 4K a little bit longer, that would make me happier, but for what you get out of this camera, it's incredible. Okay, it's summer, I'm sick of sweating, back inside. And we're back. Wow, that was a very long conversation. I don't know that I normally talk this much about image quality. And the reason that's surprising is I'm firmly of the opinion that technical image quality is not the most important aspect of a camera anymore. I'm actually firmly of the belief, at least for us uploading our content online, that we've reached peak camera image quality long ago. Like long ago we reached that, like back in the RX100 Mark V time. So what's more important is usability, and that leads into ease of use. Now, you'd probably think, and maybe not wrong, that I would lambast this camera for not having a touchscreen like the Canon G7X Mark II point shoot or as many physical buttons as some of its bigger brothers. I actually think the RX100 Mark V is pretty easy to use. Now, it does have an aperture control ring on the front, a mode dial on top, and a selector dial on the back, and a couple of customizable buttons if you do want to change how certain things work inside of the camera. Like, it's a very easy to use body, which is great because it's tiny. The biggest negative for me when it comes to ease of use isn't really anything about the body itself, it's about that flip screen. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. A YouTuber talking bad about a flip screen? For shame, everyday dad. For shame. I waggled my finger at myself. The problem isn't necessarily the flip screen, it's when the screen, like right now, is fully flipped up and fully articulated, the bottom information of the camera is cut off. So when I'm in front of the camera right now, I can't see the settings. Like I'm looking at the camera, I have no idea what the shutter speed is, the ISO. That kind of negates some of the value in having a flip up screen in the first place, because if something's wrong, I don't know how to change it. I gotta flip it down, walk around, fix it. Kind of frustrating. But what really matters about cameras to me is how easy is it to get the footage you want after you hit record. And that's a little thing I like to call fiddliness. And here, barring the screen thing I talked about a second ago, it's pretty darn easy to get the image you want. Again, built-in ND, great autofocus, good looking image, built-in stabilization, and a flip-up screen. Five things. That's a seriously dangerous combination, and that's about as good as you are going to get for a camera that very easily fits in your palm. That's the things that everybody wants, right? It's all in one camera. I mean, real talk, there are cameras out there that can do better things than the RX100 Mark V, but they are way bigger, way heavier, they draw more attention if you are just trying to get some footage out by yourself. Like, there are serious drawbacks to bigger cameras, and dang, I just like this camera, like an awful lot. But let's say you decide to buy it, what does the ecosystem slash upgrade path look like? Well, as an all-in-one point and shoot, you don't really need much in the way of upgrades. I mean, you could always get a cage like this one from SmallRig. I mean, you could use this to attach lights or audio devices or something. I mean, there also is a little grip that Sony produces to give you a little tripod and some extra physical buttons to the camera. And I mean, those are all nice and everything, but you don't really need anything to make this camera work. That's the genius and the benefit of getting point and shoot cameras. I mean, that's the draw, right, of a point and shoot, is you don't need anything else. But at the end of the day, so what, right? Is the Sony RX100 Mark V still a good camera 3 years later? And if you have not been sleeping this entire video, yes, absolutely, I love this camera. I mean, I've gotten rid of just about every other camera I own, but I keep this around as the ultimate backup. I could run the entire channel with just the RX100 Mark V if I had to. It's got great image quality, works by itself, and is frankly one of the best cameras ever made. Like, it's shockingly good. And if you can find a good open box deal like I did, you will not find a camera better anywhere else for $500. You just won't. Even today, it's still the best point and shoot ever made. Thanks for watching.